welcome to SVG-TV News for Friday, February 14th, 2020. I am Investor Bowens with the details. Minister of National Mobilization Frederick Stevenson is encouraging Vincentians to become climate change activists, especially now that many persons have been educated and informed on disaster preparedness. The minister made the call at the opening ceremony of a 3-day training workshop held this week for community groups on disaster preparedness.
That at the end of these workshops here this week, that when you go back to your communities, you're not only going back better prepared and better informed, but you're going back to your communities to be activists and to engage and to help others to come and be a part of your community group. You, as we normally say, don't take the learning for yourselves, and I would normally see.
The need for more community groups was also encouraged, as Minister Stevenson said there is more to gain from working as a team than working alone, especially when it comes to climate change projects and disaster preparedness.
The small pot of resources that is there cannot sustain one individual or two individuals in community development. You want to have a little group here, 3 of you, but there's another large group in the community that you can join and become a part of, but you want to be on your own because you hear that funds are available, and sometimes the funding is available and you get the funds, and at the end of it nothing is done.
A 2-day country work program performance monitoring framework workshop will take place here next week. The workshop will be hosted by National Emergency Management Organization NEMO with the support of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency SEDIMA and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. According to NEMO, the workshop is a follow-up to the SVG Country Work Program workshop held in January 2020 and targets senior civil servants, members of the private sector and non-governmental organizations. The main objectives of next week's workshop are to finalize and validate the logical framework analysis for SVG's Country Work Program, enhance and validate the performance monitoring framework, and agree on the next steps to inform the finalization of the CWP documentation, including the technical annexes. The workshop will take place on Monday 17th and Tuesday 18th February 2020 at NEMO's conference room, commencing at 8:30 a.m. This country continues to be a net importer of goods and services, and the government is now looking to balance this with the national export strategy now being finalized. This is according to Acting Prime Minister Montgomery Daniel, who was speaking at the final validation workshop for the export strategy on Thursday. Daniel said that SVG's export has been on the decline for decades and this needs to change.
Exports of goods and services as a percentage to GDP has steadily declined over a number of years, from 62% in 1988 to 35% in 2017. This, coupled with the fact that St. Vincent and the Grenadines continue to be a net importer of goods and services, which makes it all more important for a national export strategy.
The acting Prime Minister said that from 2014 to 2018, the central bank's report indicates that SVG imported an average of 1.1 billion EC dollars, while the export was at 778 million EC dollars. He noted that the majority of the exports for that period was in services, specifically in the travel industry. This
equated to an average net import of some $394.8 million EC annually. This, in my mind, gives further credence to the importance of a national export strategy to give guidance as to how to narrow the gap between exports and imports. On the contrary, the exportation of services has always been our strong point, especially in the travel industry. The data acquired indicated that for 2018 alone, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was a net exporter to the tune of some 543 million EC dollars in the area of travel.
National export strategy is expected to develop and sustain growth for all sectors of the economy. Certificates were distributed earlier this week to 27 participants who successfully completed training in emergency supply chain preparedness. The main aim of the training workshop, hosted by the Ministry of Health and sponsored by USAID, was to look at SVG's approach to emergency supply chains for potential disease outbreaks. At the closing ceremony on Tuesday, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Cuthbert Knight, expressed gratitude to USAID for sponsoring the workshop, noting that it will help to enhance knowledge when it comes to emergency supply chain management and preparedness among the various stakeholders.
However, though, I wish to say how grateful we are to be able to bring ourselves at this stage. And I know we are all cognizant of the importance of building capacity. We ask for this all the time. And building capacity, it's not capacity or capability to be put on a shelf. And in a crucial area such as this, emergency train or emergency supplies management within the context of health or infectious disease, it's a very serious thing. So it means that we have had some exposure to this training. I'm hearing that we are the first in the region to have one of this kind. So we should really again put some importance to what has happened here.
Knight encouraged the workshop participants to teach others what they have learned during the workshop.
So you have to now bring yourself to a position where you have to take back what you have learned with you. Don't keep it to yourself. We have work to do. You have spent a period of maybe about 3 days, though not consecutively, and I believe you have learned sufficiently enough to be able to teach others and to put into motion what you have learned. Let us be aggressive. Let us be proactive in putting into place what we have learned and not to wait for something to happen. Okay? I'm also very pleased because oftentimes we tend to go abroad for training, and persons are more inclined to do so, but when the training is local, provided locally, you don't have such, there's probably not such a great desire for a large crowd as you to really sit. So it tells me that you yourself has that encouragement, that appetite.
Knight noted that the participants are working on a manual or playbook that will be used to guide the development and implementation of an emergency supply management plan for SVG.
I am hoping that this would not be the first of its kind and that we will be able to build on what is here. It will be very important if there can be a few persons who are identified so that they can become somewhat trainer of trainers. Again, I understand that you would have worked on developing a manual, or in the process of doing that, I'm not sure. It means that, again, you have work to do. Let us again bring ourselves to the position to know that we are the ones to do it and not to wait for someone to nudge us to do it or when something has happened. And if that manual is completed already, let's not put it on the shelf. Let us use it. So the manual might be in a booklet, but what you have learned should be here so that we can execute it.
The Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment is reminding the public that travel to and from China is discouraged in light of the outbreak of coronavirus, which prompted the Director General of the World Health Organization to declare a public health emergency of international concern. The ministry says anyone who arrives in SVG having been in China within 14 days prior to arrival will be quarantined for 2 weeks. It also noted that the first activation of the quarantine as an infection control practice was effected last Friday, February 7th, 2020, and continues to apply as necessary and required. Minister of Tourism, Sports and Culture Cecile Sesmaki said Budget 2020 has things in place to allow the National Cultural Foundation to step up its game. Speaking at the CDC press conference earlier this week, Minister Mackey said that the NCF will be provided with an office space to help it improve its operation.
They would be provided with an office space, and that would allow them to also improve on their operation. The development aspect of their operation, I'm sure CDC will be working very closely with them in all the three components where they can collaborate and put on development programs, and also the whole aspect that I've been mentioning for a couple of years. I'm sure that the CDC would be delighted in this new aspect of operation of the NCF. Animation, short film, and producing mementos of the festival. I'm sure that the NCF will be delighted to look at those aspects, to have items produced that can be put on sale, of course with collaboration with the stakeholders, and also to look closer at the whole aspect of short.
Minister Mackey said plans are also in place for the development of the National School Band Showcase.
Coordinator and assistant coordinator of the creative cultural industry in Rodney Small and Bomani Charles, and they have been spearheading, especially Rodney, the development of the National Secondary Schools Band Showcase. We engaged about 18 of those secondary school bands last year. Some of them did not participate in the showcase, but our intention is to engage all 26 secondary schools in this showcase. In so doing, we would be providing a pool of musicians of all types to filter into the community bands, but they themselves, some of them are stayed together after the festival, and therefore they provide entertainment in their communities at various events throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Additionally, the government has allocated 60,000 EC dollars for the structural improvements of the Carnival Development Corporation. The Miss SVG pageant has been taken off the Carnival calendar of activities held between June and July annually. The pageant will now take place on October 31st this year. Coordinator of the Carnival Development Corporation Beauty Shows Committee, Lafon Fraser, made the announcement at the press briefing early this week as the CDC outlines plans for Vincimas 2020. The reason given for the change in the hosting of the pageant was due to the Beauty Shows Committee adopting a more national event which will coincide with the country's independence anniversary activities.
Miss SVG remains largely a local audience. It is no longer, has not been for a very long time, referred to as Carnival Queen, officially in any way. The independence period also gives an even more national queen flair, and that's what we're really working toward. If we play our cards right, we will leverage people coming into the country during that period. As you are all aware, the independence period is now growing. It has grown immensely, and it's continuing to grow even further. This is also a period of pageants. It has become a period of pageants as well.
Fraser further noted that there is need for growth to take the pageant to another level.
Has seen many changes over the past 2 decades, and the question is, has Miss SVG evolved enough to withstand those changes? And by our estimation, there's more to be done through this product, which we have been charged with developing, protecting, and maintaining. The changes we are working for 2020 and beyond: securing prestigious and rare opportunities which are far more likely for the title holders than a young woman who is not holding the title of Miss SVG is paramount. These opportunities, of course, would be separate from those which are currently afforded the winner, such as the university scholarship and representing St. Vincent and the Grenadines at other pageants, whether regionally or internationally. We are seizing the moment to chart a new path.
The reigning Miss SVG now has an extended time to accomplish some of her programs. The rural pageants will continue as usual during their carnival activities.